Hi, this is Chris at Clever Unicorn Games and the Unicorn Collective, back with another interview. Today I have Shem Phillips, designer of many great games, including one of my favorites, Paladins of the West Kingdom. How are you doing today, Shem?
I'm doing very well, thanks.
So what does Shem do when Shem is not designing or playing games? What is it you do with the rest of your spare time?
Actually, I've been playing tons of Assassin's Creed Odyssey lately, like more than anything. But that's still technically playing games, I suppose. So other than that, it's probably watching sci-fi or crime shows on TV, something like that. Yeah, but it's usually just games, games, games.
Yeah, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Didn't get it when it came out, but got it when it was on sale on Steam there about 3 or 4 months ago, and just got
Yep,
addicted. It was so good.
it's so good.
Yeah, so and that's one thing we've touched on previous interviews is lots of board game designers tend to be video gamers as well. So it kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I find it's a good for me. Like it's a way to escape a bit from. Like, I love playing games and making games, but it's still in a way work. So digital games are a bit of an escape for me to like just unplug from all the development, all the thinking and planning, and constantly thinking about games and just enjoy someone else's creation. I guess get immersed in it.
So what would you say is your favorite game? And it's a bit tough this one because usually people have lots, but is there one where you'll think, yeah, I'll play that no matter who asks and when they ask, I want to play that game?
Oh man, um, if it's going to be like a Euro style game, something like Great Western Trail or Underwater Cities, something that's got a lot of meat on the bones, but not too rules heavy. I'll jump into the Lacerda games, but they're going to burn my noodle for a few days. If it's something like more quick and light, anything like Azul or just like a real quick puzzly kind of abstract, I love those games as well. So there's a bit of a range there,
Yeah,
but not so
Underwater
much.
City is
Yeah, not
great.
so much into the party kind of crazy games. I enjoy more serious games. I think depends on the company, I guess.
But I was really surprised by Underwater Cities. That sort of came out of nowhere for me, and then it just to me, and my friend hates it, or one of my friends hates it when I say this, but it kind of stopped me from playing Terraforming Mars. Because to me, it feels a
Yeah,
lot like Terraforming Mars, but it's a little bit more interesting. Now, I like Terraforming Mars a lot, but Underwater Cities kind of fills that same hole, so to speak, but in a slightly lighter way. You've not got as many
and it
cards, you
scratches
know.
the same itch.
Yeah, same itch, but not a
Yeah.
whole tableau full of 100 cards. You know, it's limits you to how many cards you got there, and sort of fits a bit better on the table as well. What genres or kinds, mechanics, or even a game was it that inspired you to start making games yourself?
Well, I actually didn't. I started making games before I even knew about the modern tabletop community or hobby at all. So my inspiration came from my childhood, from playing like card games or Pluto, Mahjong, Scrabble, all those ones, Monopoly. Um, so I just wanted to make a game because I loved games, I love puzzles. I would have been, I think, 22-ish at the time, and thought I should make a game. So I made this family style roll and move game, and then through that, I got introduced to a local board game convention. Realized that there's this whole, immersion hobby that's grown that I didn't know about. So that got me connected. Started playing tons of games. So early on, I think the games that kind of struck me is like, wow, this is fresh. I've never seen this ever. Town, Carcassonne, Family Business, Citadels, and Ticket to Ride, all those sorts of ones that got me in.
And have you found now that since then you've tried to play as many as you can?
Yeah, yeah. I think I've played over 700 games or something on I track like every time I play a game, I rate it on BGG so I can see like, how many games I've actually played. I think that's from about 12 years ago. So
How are you doing on the top 100 on there?
got one to go.
Oh man,
It's got,
I'm on 71 now, I think it is. Trying to get
oh
through them,
wow, yeah,
but there's
yeah. I made. I go on. Yeah.
no, I was gonna say there's a few on there that I probably never play. Like unfortunately, things like Through the Ages first edition. I love Through the Ages second edition, but I
Yeah.
don't ever see myself going back and playing first edition, so I'll probably never get that one because once you play
Yeah.
second edition, why would you, go back and play the first edition?
Yeah, totally. The only one I've got to play is King and Death Monster, so it's a tough one to find in New Zealand as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one I've got. I do painting as well. I paint a lot of miniatures, and that's one that I really want to get hold of just to do the miniatures because some of those are just I mean, they're horrifying, but they're good. They look really interesting to paint. When coming up with a game, where is it that you start? So you have the idea. Where do you go to next?
Um, I think for me and for Sam, I co-design a lot with. It's more like what is a hook we can create in a game, I guess. So even like we're working on the first game in the South trilogy for like a year and a half away from now, 2 years away. And he showed me a few ideas he's got, and like this stuff's cool. This is like these things are I like it. I can see it would work, but there's no like kind of like wow kind of hook like thing that grabs you. Goes that's fresh, that's unique. So we usually spend like up to 2 or 3 months trying to find that first. And once we get that, we know there's some kind of little gem in the game that we can work on. Then it's like, well, what's the setting? Which for our games is often already preset, like it's going to be medieval. And then thinking of what is actually the story of the game, who are the players, and what's the aim of the game, and then we start to flesh it out from there. But so it's usually like get the little hook, get the setting, then work on mechanisms, make sure the game's great, and start thinking about the story from there.
You've had numerous games published now and got out to gamers. Has there ever been a point or a number of points, if you can think of them, where you've hit a barrier or a hurdle and you've been stopped dead in your tracks and had to sit and think because you didn't know how you were going to get past it? And then how did you get past those barriers?
You mean in terms of game design?
Yeah, design or the publishing side. Back when you were doing it yourself before publishers came in to help with the with the heavy lifting. What was
Yeah.
there a time you can think where it just stopped you?
I think the biggest or the hardest thing for me, which I actually never really overcame, was how to get my games into stores. Um, Especially being from New Zealand, you're very cut off. It's like you're looking at a big plane fare just to get to a convention to try and speak to people. So I think I started out with this kind of idea of I'll be like a boutique publisher. There's 100 copies of this game. That's it. And I was quite content doing that as a hobby. It wasn't until I Kickstarter that suddenly I could sell games to people around the world. But with my my partnership with Renegade, that's kind of changed because they handle all the retail stuff. So I kind of got a get out of jail free card with that, and just didn't have to do it anymore. Didn't have to think about it. But that was a struggle. I was like, I want to get my games in stores. How do I do this? Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest ones for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you as well. Even though we had the successful Kickstarter and we got all those games out to the backers, we're now because we kept a bunch of copies of the game for taking to shows and selling at shows, but the shows didn't happen. So I'm now sat with about 1,000 games in my garage, thinking, where are we
Yeah.
going to go from here? So I've been speaking to this fulfillment distributors and stuff, and yeah, it's not easy.
And then eventually, if the games have been out for a year or two, they're like, well, it's old now. Today's market, so it's hard to sell something that's from a couple of years ago. Yeah, tough.
Have you ever played a game and you just didn't like it? You don't have to name the game, but what was it? Was it the theme, the mechanic, or what was it that put you off that game?
And two of them spring to mind straight away, but I won't name them because it's mean. Um, I think it's usually when it's just really poor design, um, and the systems don't encourage positive play. They encourage players to be not to. There's one game I played where, in a game where it's about optimization, you want to like use all your cards, all your resources as best as possible, and you feel like you should be rewarded for that. This game rewarded you for not doing that. It rewarded you for like, I'm just going to pass now and not actually try and milk the round. And that irritated me from a design point because it didn't encourage fun, it didn't encourage smart thinking, and so things like that where I feel the design counters how people want to play and how they want to enjoy a game. That frustrated me because that's the game is great except for that one thing.
No, that's a really good answer. No, I don't think that's one that we've heard before about the optimization of your turns and things. That's an important part of a game. Yeah, feeling like you've accomplished something at the end of your turn, rather than
Yeah,
having to pass. Like games that force you to pass. I mean, there's certain games that they'll reward you for passing in a way that makes it feel not so bad. But yeah, there are some
yeah,
games where it'll just say, you pass, and it feels like you've just completely wasted that turn by not being able to do anything, and it's not your fault because it was built into the game. Yep, no, I understand
yeah.
that. Why do you make games? What drives you to make games?
I think like most creative people, it's just like you can't help yourself. I think any kind of creative thing, like if it's songwriting or it's painting or whatever it is, like you just can't help yourself. You have to create. It's just in our bones. So I think for me, that's now largely with board games because I love playing board games. So it's just a natural thing to create them. So if I wasn't doing this, I'd probably be creating something else. So.
I don't know what it's like in New Zealand, but has the state of the world at present affected the way that you're designing your games?
Only slightly. Our government cracked down quickly and went into lockdown for I think it was 8 to 9 weeks. We're in lockdown. We're still technically in like level 1, but it's pretty much just the borders are closed, sort of. Um, but no, we had a few things like the shipping company shut down, so we couldn't send out orders for about 4 weeks here. But the interesting thing that I found was Sam, who co-designs a lot of the games with me for the West Kingdom. He's currently working on the second game in our Circadians universe with another Kiwi who's now living in Italy. So they were able to play test this new game through Tabletopia, which is quite interesting because I've never used it for like demoing games or just playing games, but never to actually play test through it. So that was quite interesting. Just using Discord to chat and then playtesting and chatting afterwards it's interesting. I think it was definitely useful to help that game continue to progress throughout lockdown. Otherwise, it would just got to a standstill. And also because these two guys are like on opposite ends of the earth and they're designing a game together, so it's cool to kind of watch them do it.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing about these digital platforms like Tabletopia and Tabletop Simulator. I think now, especially myself, don't the interface can be funny with them. I mean, they're not the most intuitive and easy things to use, but from a playtesting point of view, I don't know where I was beforehand. I think a lot of people are
Mm.
realizing that as well now, because the problem with playtesting is if you're just playtesting with your prototypes traditionally, you're kind of stuck with a certain group of people. And even though, they might be subjective or objective towards the game, there's still going to be people that know you and are more likely to be nice to you and less likely to give you the full truth. Whereas if you can play test with people across the world that you've never potentially met, I think that opens up a new sort of income of critique. It gives you a whole different uh, look on the game, especially when it's a lot of different groups of people as well. So you potentially get lots of different feedback from different groups, which you can only really do with these digital platforms. Which now, it's made me think,
Mm.
it's and the fact that it doesn't cost you anything to do it either. You're literally just uploading it for free. It's not, you don't
Yeah,
have to go to GameCraft or one of the other companies and get a prototype made for $50 or $100. You can literally put it up there for free and then play with people. All it's cost you is what, $19 or $20 for the tabletop simulator program. Yeah, it's amazing.
yeah,
And it makes me
yeah. It's
think, why
pretty
haven't we been using it longer? Because it's been out for years.
good. Yeah.
What is it that you're working on right now? What have you got in the pipeline?
So pretty soon we'll be releasing Viscount's Tome Saga and Raiders of Scythia to retail. That's probably another couple months away, or more, maybe 2 or 3 months. But that's about to get loaded onto ships next month. So that's all the logistics side of things getting handled. And then we have a game called Hadrian's War coming out probably around January, February. It'll probably go straight to retail with pre-orders. Actually designed by a UK bloke living in New Zealand now, called Bobby Hill. So it's his first published game. I like to think of it as like a medium to heavyweight pen and paper style flip and fill kind of game that plays 1 to 6 players in about an hour. So it's like, I think it's a little bit like if Paladins was a roll and write, this is what you'd get. It's kind of feel you get out of it. So lots of combos and chaining actions. And then next year we also want to do one expansion for each of the West Kingdom games, and then the Circadians 2 game as well. Quite a bit.
Keep 'em busy then.
Yeah, a little bit.
And are
I'm
all
not playing
these
Assassin's
a lot
Creed.
of these now coming out under your own publishing house?
Yeah, those are all under Garphill. So I also have Shelfie Stack. It got kickstarted recently through Arcus Games. Noctiluca was a couple of years ago through Z-Man. So now and then, if I ever design like something that doesn't fit my brand, because we're slowly getting this thing of like Garphill's like a medium weight Euro style brand. We don't really want to branch out into kids games or party games. So if I ever do something that's not my kind of game, I'll try and pitch it to a publisher that it better suits. which I guess for me is a bit of a privilege to be able to do that, So it's not
But it's
everyone can just go out and do that.
but it's a well-deserved privilege. That's the thing. You've made no bad games, which always helps.
Oh, you haven't seen them then.
No, that's
Mate,
it. I think
plenty of
I
bad
must have
games.
just played the good ones then.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of them. That's the thing. And yeah, when you get to the point where you've released the games that you have released, I mean, I expect it will get a lot easier to go to a publisher and say, "Here, I've got this game." I think that's what we
Yeah,
all
because
strive for,
there's
though.
so many. Yeah, there's so many of us designing games now, like thousands. So it's just how do you stand out? So it's just, I guess, lucky or privileged to be able to I've done the grind of 12 years of trying to build something. Now it's finally starting to reap a harvest. So.
Yeah, it's one of those now where, yeah, there are so many that you either have to have some sort of a reputation in the business, or you go to the publishers with something nearly finished already. So
Yeah.
something that's already had all the hard work and stuff done, and that way you're more likely. Yeah, I think the days of turning up with bits of card with stuff written on them is probably behind now, which is a shame. But it's just the way it's moving, I suppose. So many people are doing it now. You need to go to a publisher with something extra special.
Yeah, so much competition. You got to stand out somehow.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to a new designer with an idea in their head? What would you tell them on their entrance into the business?
If it was their very first game and they're still trying to get off the ground to just test it or whatever, say just jump in and try it. Throw things at the table and see what sticks. Um, I'm a very much a head designer, so I stay in my head for ages. And a lot of people will discourage that. They'll say, get at the table, get at the table. For me, that doesn't work, but I know that it's a really good principle is to I'll do it for certain things. So if I've got an idea for how a dice mechanism might work, I'll test just that. Even if it's just me throwing dice, stacking them, or whatever the game does, get a feel. So get it to the table as quickly as possible without over-engineering the entire game, because I've done that where I think my second game I was working on, my very first version, I designed it all with graphics and then printed it onto a board that wrapped around and folded and it played it once and it sucked. So yeah, there's a tendency I think when it's your first little game to do that. And the other thing I'd say is once you have that game, don't think that you have to sit on that game for years. Start designing something else. Just don't stay with one game because it can get too precious and you can't get it blindsided by not knowing if it's good and you think it's amazing and then turns out it's just rubbish. So because most of our first games and second games and third games are probably not that great. That's just the truth of who we are as designers. We're all learning. So
No, I like it. Thank you very much for coming and speaking to me today, Shem. This has been brilliant.
yep, that's been great.